start recording. All right, so this is the second session in the morning, and I just wanted to share my screen real quick because I've added one more item to our course documents on Blackboard for week 1. One of the last links here, do-it-yourself box spring, the most simple design. It's that one that I showed you that was just 2x4s and screws. All right, so, and remember, you can always find other designs on YouTube as well, but this is that one.
This profile gauge can be used to measure the shape of irregular items.
This is the one I showed you a second ago that was
up to you.
This. Right, so if you want to make your most basic one, I've uploaded that video. Remember, we're using 1/4 inch screen. I think they're using 1/2 inch, but it's the same deal. All right, hopefully we have everybody back. And so I'm gonna continue sharing my screen now, and I'm gonna go over to some of my other tabs that I have open, and we're gonna start researching the background of your property. So if you are working in the United States and you get a contract, or you are an academic and you are going to work on a property for the first time, one of the first things you do is you look at the history of the property. You look through all the paper trail that you can in terms of the landscape, the architecture, any history of previous studies, et cetera, et cetera. Luckily, that is the normal fare. That's what all archaeologists have to do. So we have generally funneled most of that information into a few pipelines online. It used to be that somebody at your level, like you start off working as a field tech for a CRM firm, and your boss might, back in my day, they would say, oh, we're about to work on this parcel. I need you to drive to the state capitol and look up in the archives all of this stuff about that parcel. And over the last 2 decades, they have finally put that stuff online. So the place to go is the state historic preservation offices. You are going to hear this term in American archaeology all the time. We abbreviate this SHPO or SHPO. So the SHPO office exists in every state, I believe every territory as well. I think Puerto Rico has a SHPO office. I know Washington, D.C. has a SHPO office. So every state has its own SHPO. That is the person in charge of all historic cultural material for the state. And generally speaking, the person at the top of that office is a seasoned archaeologist or historian or architectural historian. And they run official government offices, and you can see that they've got the links here, and I am in National Park Service, nps.gov right here. And this is the list of all SHPO offices. The reason why it's through the National Park Service is because the SHPO's office is the office that's in charge of putting sites on the registry. And what we mean by the registry is the National Register of Historic Places. You see that link right here in the middle of the screen. NRHP, we actually just call it the National Register. National Register sites are ones that have been determined by this office to have some type of cultural value worth documenting, possibly preserving, and definitely adding to the archives. Not every archaeological site will be added to the National Register. Just because you find old stuff on your property does not make it nationally significant. And so what we talk about in archaeology, remember I mentioned phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is finding out if there's a site there. Phase 2, I said, is testing a site. That's when you are determining your National Register eligibility in phase 2. So you find a site in phase 1, you test it in phase 2, and you find out, is it just a scatter of crap? Is it an actual stratified archaeological site? Does it have intact features beneath the plow zone? Does it have any important history to our nation or to the local history or state history? So phase 2 is often deemed the NRHP testing phase, where you're testing it to see whether or not it is eligible to be put on the National Register. When you're done with a phase 2, some of your sites might be National Register eligible, and you make those recommendations to your local or your state SHPO office, and it gets added. Well, let's say that the construction project still has to go on, and it's going to disturb a National Register site. Well, that's when you're going into phase 3, mitigation. What are we going to do? Are we going to excavate as much as we can out of this National Register site? Because just being on the register doesn't mean you don't ever disturb it. It just means it's on the map telling everybody, ooh, watch out. Don't do anything here without checking with an archaeologist. And so we would go to phase 3, which would be, can the project move around this site? Can we excavate as much of this site as possible before it gets destroyed, et cetera, et cetera. So depending upon your region that you're in, you might want to look at the SHPO guidelines for your state. Each state is going to be slightly different. This is the State Historic Preservation Office. It's only coordinated at the national level. And so really the end authority for anybody working in the United States, the end authority tends to be at the state level. All right, your SHPO office is in charge. So I'm in West Virginia. My house is in West Virginia. So I'd be exiting the National Park Service and I'd be going to West Virginia Culture Site. Of course, it's West Virginia, so it's not as pretty of a web page, but it is chock full of really good information. I've already fast forwarded a little bit, and one of the things you can go to in most of your SHPO's offices is their GIS. This is absolutely invaluable. Hopefully most of you know what a GIS is. Geographical Information System. GIS is it's a way of layering spatial data in a computer so that a particular project, a particular observation or data point is placed exactly on the map where it was found. Well, this GIS is necessarily password protected because we do not want everybody in the nation to know where every archaeological site in the state of West Virginia is located. I get guys coming to my house about once a month because I have that sign out on my curb that says I have a historic house, and they come knocking on my door saying with a metal detector, and they say, can we metal detect your property? Because there's all this Civil War stuff around here. And I tell them no, but I know my neighbors do it all the time. Well, we don't want those folks to have a map of every National Register archaeological site in the state. So for those of you that work in a CRM firm, your company probably already has access to these state SHPO files. You just need to request that access from your boss. So if you're going to be working in California, your boss probably already has a pipeline to the California GIS National Register SHPO GIS database. I, working in West Virginia, all I did was I emailed the SHPO, right? The State Historic Preservation Officer. And I'm sure there's somewhere here I could find that link for the email. But yeah, you go to West Virginia SHPO, and I would email the SHPO and say, I'm an archaeologist, I'm a professional archaeologist, I'm doing this, I need access to the state files. And they give you a password, and it's usually good for either the period of your project, like a month or so, or it's you'll have it for the year. If you have access through your current job or something, go for it. Contact your bosses. There's a handful of people in this class that are already working at CRM firms. Go ahead and ask if you can get access to the SHPO files through your CRM firm. You might be able to do that. In which case, what are you going to do? You're going to be able to zoom into your property and do a record search. If you do not work for a CRM company and you're just a student, I don't think it's a bad idea to go ahead and just email the SHPO. See if you can get access to these files for just the next month. And I will even help you draft an email if you need it. Say, I'm a student taking a field school, I'm digging my own backyard, and I've been told that proper due diligence is to look for nearby archaeological sites that have also been discovered and look at those reports before I dig. Can you either A, give me access to the site files, or if you can't do that for me, could you email me a couple of good examples of archaeological surveys that have gone on around my property? I'm pretty sure they'd be able to at least send you a couple of phase 1s or phase 2s that have been done around your property. That's a little bit of work for them, okay, but it's not that much work. So I am along this old road. Let's see. No, not that road. This road. My house is along this road, and you see that we've got houses marked and then surveys marked. So here is a polygon. That polygon, I'd have to look up what this one is. Jefferson County 0054. I'm not sure what that is. Some architectural assessment that was done there. Moving on up. Looks like this area was surveyed. This area was surveyed as a part of a program called Morgan's Grove. I could probably look up that assessment right here to look at that report. Yeah, it's going to load up the actual details of that survey. Now, this is just a land appraisal, it looks like. I'm not seeing any archaeological surveys in this particular area, and my house, by the way, right there. So I don't see any particular, that's actually my main house, and that's that little red barn. So it even gets mapped out right there. So you're going to want to look at your SHPO state files and see if any reports have been done in your region. Now, next thing to do, any questions on the GIS? This is something that, generally speaking, the further up you get, the more regular access you get to this type of data. As students, you may or may not, depending upon your state SHPO, get access to these files. Questions as I'm pulling up the next thing?
I have a question. Is it, so I'm in like a really urban area of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Is it pretty likely that there's not a lot of historical sites around
No,
here? Or
actually just the opposite. The more urban you are, the more likely it is that you'll have some reports done by somebody, because building things is what triggers the laws that causes archaeological reports to be done. So the more building that there has been done, the more likely that there has been some phase 1 or phase 2 report. So especially older cities, so like a Baltimore or a New York City is going to have a bunch of contract archaeology reports, even in the urban areas. Houston may not be that old, but I mean, you're going to have some, definitely, because the U.S. Department of Agriculture wants to put up a new livestock something or other. Well, they've got to survey that land, and then you'll have an archaeological report. And remember that these will also report on things like Native American. So you have a big open area that's going to be a new cattle ranch for the USDA. Well, that gets surveyed by an archaeology crew, and you have Native American artifacts from 9000 BC up until contact period. Well, that stuff really, that would be independent on whether or not you're near a city, right? Native American artifacts are generally on different types of landforms. So you never know, in other words. Let me go back to sharing real quick. And so I wanted to show you what, so I'm just going to type in West Virginia SHPO phase 1B. Maybe I might not even do SHPO, just West Virginia Archaeology phase 1B report. Let's just see if I can pull up a decent report for you. What I love is my West Virginia SHPO site has every step-by-step instruction on how to write one of these reports, which we will come back to. All right, so let's just find, here is a phase 1 archaeological investigation in New York City. All right, here is a typical phase 1 archaeological test. Notice that it's not even in my area. I typed in West Virginia, it didn't show up, it's New York. But these are kind of standardized. Every state's going to be a little different, but largely it's the same format. You're going to need some type of description of the project and your site. What is planning to be done there? What's triggering your work? Is there going to be a new bypass? Is there going to be a new apartment building? And then your research goals. For archaeology, did you document any historic architecture on the site? How did you assess it? What is the landscape like? What is the geology of your area like? What are the soils in your area like? What's the local climate? Have there been previous archaeological research projects done in your area? How about previous architectural studies in your area? Have there been any studies of the land use? In other words, has this mostly been urban? Has this mostly been agricultural? Has it been used for forest, etc.? And essentially, what other previous technical investigations have there been? And then you did your phase 1, which is essentially you did your walkover, you did your photographs, you did your background research, and then you did your shovel test pits, and you identified or didn't identify any sites on this property. That is a phase 1 report. Right? At the end, you have made conclusions and recommendations as to whether or not your particular property that you have researched is eligible. Well, first of all, whether there's a site there, whether it's deserving of being noted, whether it should be further tested, for National Register eligibility, etc. So how do you go about finding all of this stuff? Because as a, by the way, I haven't used this term yet. I'm training you to be a field tech. That is technically the job description. If you're looking for a job in archaeology at your level, the job is field tech. And the nickname that we have for that job is shovel bum. And because you're going to be shovel bumming around from project to project to project to project. And so working in different states, working at different sites at different time periods. So one of the places you can look to get jobs, by the way, is a place called shovelbums.org. And it's a good place to look up for archaeology jobs. Anyway, my point being is that as a shovel bum, you're going to be working at a lot of different sites, a lot of different regions. How do you find all of this information when you're not anchored in one location all the time? Well, the truth of the matter is the SHPO's office is not looking for a dissertation. They do not care that this is original research. You can literally copy and paste out of other people's reports as long as you cite them as being from that other report. They just want to make sure that you have looked at what are the common soils in the region? What is the history of the architecture there? You don't have to do a brand new, fresh architectural history report about the entire region in order to write those few paragraphs. You go find somebody who has written an architectural history of your region and you summarize them in a paragraph, okay? So that's why I was encouraging you to find these types of online reports. And so notice I just got this one from New York. They are generally also password protected and hidden on state servers. These reports tend not to be just Googleable like I just did. And the reason being we don't want everybody to know where all the artifacts are. Increasingly, archaeologists like myself think this is all bullshit. We should have all of this public because honestly, it's better for everybody to know where something is to avoid hurting it. It's better for everybody to know where the important stuff is and protect it against the few bad apples that might destroy it. So you'll find some SHPO's offices that will be no problem, let you have access to all this data. Others, not so much. So for your next little bit, what I am going, oh, I'm sorry, there's one more thing. So remember, I said that you had to, in your report, oops. Notice that in this report, they have things like the USGS quadrangle maps, the survey area. You're going to want topography in there, soils and geology. Where do you find that? That's easier to find. That is the USGS, US Geological Survey, usgs.gov. Once you go to usgs.gov, you can type in USGS historical topo maps. And you'll get historic topo maps preserving the past. There are a couple of ways to link into it, but basically you just go into the map view, the topo view, and you can watch a demo, you can do these other things. Best way to, oh, sorry, I just went back and then back again. There, and then view and download maps. And once again, you are in a GIS. This GIS is for the United States, and they have scanned all of the topographic maps for the US. I go into my region. I am just north of here, right about there. I click, and now anything that would have that point in it has now appeared in my search window on the right. And I've got 1891 to 2019 topo data. What I'm going to have you do, and what every archaeologist should do, is you go through these a little bit and you pick out the representative ones of the earliest, the latest, and any significant changes that happened in between. So since my house is from 1790, it should appear on pretty much any map going back all the way to the beginning. So I should investigate that. Does it? Does it appear? Does my house appear as a dot on any structure? And not all of these maps will record structures. It all depends on what the cartographer was mapping at the time. So you're going to want to go through these, find the ones that have structures, find the ones that have historic districts, and find out what was the landscape like at different times over history. At what point did your property take its current form? And every report to a SHPO's office includes these topo maps. The earliest, the most recent, and any significant changes in between. So I want to see at least like 3 or 4 topo maps for your region in your final report as well. Ideally, with like an arrow pointing at your site, your property. Let me pull up one of these. Let's see. Here's a Shepherdstown 1953 map. My options are to load like kind of just a screen resolution JPEG, or if I'm going to load this into my own GIS, I can load a GeoTIFF. It's a high resolution one that's going to load right into a GIS. If you have ArcGIS or anything like that, you can do that. I'm just going to load the JPEG. It downloads. You can do a preview as well. And so I have this as a JPEG. And let's see, in the 1950s, yep, sure enough, my house is right there. It does not show any other structure on my property other than my house. It's not showing my carriage house. It's not showing any outbuildings, just my house, and then the little cottage across the street. I'd be very curious to see when that cottage was built, because I think that was probably in the 1950s. So here I have a 1953 map and it's already there. So I should go back. I should go back to the 40s and the 30s and see when did that cottage arrive on the landscape. You see how that's going? All right. Questions? All right, so what I'd like to do is give you the next, let's see, what time is it? It's 10:30. I want to give you the next half hour, and I would like you to just do a little bit of web surfing now, okay? I want you to look up your state SHPO's office. I would like you to go to the USGS.gov and find the historic topo maps and start looking at your area. Essentially do the things that I was just doing on screen so that we do it all at the same time together, and in half an hour come back with any questions, hiccups, problems, whatever that you might run into. Okay? Questions? No? Good. All right. Half an hour, everybody. 11 o'clock.